With Summer League play getting ready to take off for the Chicago Bulls in Las Vegas, they still have not addressed their main concern going into the offseason, which was moving on from Zach LaVine. We're going to be talking about three possible reasons why Zach LaVine has not been traded. This is your host, Rico Greenhowe, and this is another episode of Bulls Digest. Before we go ahead and jump into it, wanted to let you guys know that 78.1% of you guys that watch the videos are not subscribed to the channel. Make sure you mash that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with the latest news and happenings around your Chicago Bulls. Without further ado, guys, let's jump into the hot topic of the day, which is the three questions around LaVine trade. All right, guys, and so look, I picked this article up. I think that this is a terrific article, and it really talks about three different points as to why Zach LaVine has not been moved, and I'm going to present the fourth one towards the end. But I love how this brings up really some questions that we might have as Chicago Bulls fans, because these 3 points are valid, but you also can look at these points and say, is it so valid? All right, guys. And so let's first take a look at the title of this article, which is, does no one want Zach LaVine? I love that off top. But going into the first segment here, it talks about LaVine can't stay healthy, which is very true. Look, it talks about the fact that he played in 25 games last season. It talks about the knee injuries and the nagging injuries. But one of the things that I like that's pointed out here is that it says that he's played an average of 56 games per season. All right, guys, so we were talking about 56 games per season. I think it's 65 games that you have to play in, and that qualifies you for awards in the NBA. And to be honest with you, if you play, I think anywhere from 60 to 65 games, guys, I think that that is pretty solid in an 82 game season. Counting that player is hopefully available in the playoffs, I think that that's pretty solid. So when you first look at the injury history, which is a lot of what is surrounding Zach LaVine, when the article breaks down the fact that he's played in 56 games per, it makes you wonder that, is that really blown out of proportion what we're talking about with his injuries? Because I'm pretty sure there's probably players out there in the league right now that are not averaging 56 games per. Okay, so I think that, look, for as much as that is true about Zach LaVine, we have to now question, is that really one of the main reasons why are we overlooking that, or whoever has got this narrative around Zach LaVine? Clearly, we see that he's missing games, but is it that many? All right, so that brings up a huge question mark for me. Next, we have our second point, guys, which is lacks the skills for the Bills. I think that's funny right there. But look, this brings up a great question, okay? Because look, we paid this guy a lot of money, understandably so. But I've said this before on the channel, we paid this guy on potential, all right? And it says that he's not elite in any of his skills. He's not a great playmaker, not a great rebounder or defender, right? That's true. He's not necessarily that solid in all three of those aspects. Not a great mid-range shooter. We know that. And he gets his points from the three or at the rim. But here's what's critical about this, all right? It says his rim attempts have fallen, so his efficiency reaching the lowest it's been in years at 45% from the field. So to repeat that, his efficiency has fallen a bit as far as his rim attempts, guys, and the percentages are down. All right, so guys, that is a critical point here, okay, because that is absolutely true. He does get a lot of shot attempts up at the three-point land, and I believe at one point he was the record holder, I think, for the Chicago Bulls in three-point makes until Kobe White came along, I think, last season and broke that. So that's absolutely true, and it reminds me of something that Paul Pierce had to say, and he's saying that, look, as you get older, you start to play away from the basket. Now, this is pretty concerning because he's only 29 years old. All right, with the injuries we just talked about, clearly his game is starting to change, and he's not necessarily a knockdown three-point shooter. He is not a terrific mid-range shooter, and to top it, for him to get off great mid-range shots, guys, he has to have the ball in his hands. All right. So that's another thing, too. He's not necessarily a great off-the-ball player. And when you start to say now, or you start to see, now that his at-rim attempts are falling because the athleticism is probably falling down with the injuries, that's going to start to affect his shot. Okay, because now he's not necessarily getting the separation from defenders. And also, too, it's really going to be, I think, an issue for him as far as getting the elevation on jump shots. So that is another reason why perhaps teams are staying away from this, is because unlike the Chicago Bulls, they are looking at the trajectory of what is going on with Zach LaVine, and they're saying, no, thank you. Now, that brings us to the last point, guys, which is the contract. All right, a lot of people are talking about the contract and how it is terrible, but looking at this thing, guys, okay, and what he's slated to make over the next couple seasons, it says that no team wants to be paying a 32-year-old LaVine $48 million. All right, maybe in the past collective bargaining agreement, it's saying before you get into the second aprons. All right, now the one thing that it does talk about here that is another critical point is saying that, look, any team that's trading for LaVine has to be 100% positive that he is the missing piece that is going to take to get over the hump. All right, so look, I think that that is an excellent point, and I think that that has been talked about on multiple news networks around multiple channels, that if you're making Zach LaVine, you're trading for Zach LaVine, more than likely he's probably going to be your third option, and you had better be getting the player that is for sure going to push you over the hump. So I think that that is absolutely another valid point. Now, that brings me to the fourth point that I'm going to throw out there, guys. And I think another thing that would probably, or is probably, I should say, holding teams back from trading for Zach LaVine is got to be the fit. Just that simple. Does he fit with what you have going on with your team? Here's an example. Look at what Golden State did with Chris Paul. Okay, it was clear that Chris Paul is a terrific pick and roll point guard. Did he necessarily go with the chaos that Golden State likes to run on the offensive end? No, that didn't necessarily work out. He was out of there within a year. Remember when Golden State brought D'Angelo Russell over, right? After he had his most improved player award that year, I think with the Nets, and then he got traded over in that Kevin Durant deal, right? That didn't work out, okay? And he was another guy that he likes to operate with the basketball. He likes to get into the mid-range, and Golden State is all about shooting the three ball. Now, I get that Zach LaVine theoretically is leaning a bit more on the three ball, but can we say that Golden State getting him, that's going to be necessary for them to push now past Minnesota? Is it going to push them past OKC? Like, does it even get them past like Denver? Does it get them into the NBA Finals? And that's questions that I think that teams are going to have to ask themselves with the fit. Even if you look at a team like the 76ers, okay? Yes, they got Paul George over there, and I get it. Like, I think that you're still going to have some question marks about Paul George because of what he does in the postseason, and he also has injury concerns. But Paul George probably maybe fits a lot more than, say, a Zach LaVine there, because he's a little bit more versed as to what he can do on the court. Not only can he score at all three levels, but he defends at a high level as well. And he can really defend maybe a 1 through 4. You know, I'm not sure if PG still has that in him, but he's definitely shown that. And that's something that, you know, a team like Philly could use. That's something like a team like Golden State would need. They're already traditionally a small ball team, so they're going to need somebody that can do other aspects of the game. And that's where you really run into a question mark with Zach LaVine. It just comes down to, I think, the fit. I think you could really seriously look at the contract and say, okay, if it is a guy that you think is going to get over the hump, you can look at the injuries concerns and say, hey, at least we know we're getting 56 games out of it. So you can really overlook that. And I think that you can just accept him for who he is as a player, right? Because that was brought up about, hey, he doesn't do everything well. That's fine. But does he fit with what we're trying to do? And that's a really huge question that I have with Zach LaVine moving forward. Does he necessarily fit with some of these teams that we've suggested that he be traded to? Even a team like the Miami Heat. Look, does he necessarily fit the Miami Heat culture? Like, how's he going to open up their offense when you have Jimmy Butler, who likes to post up a lot? You know that the offense is going to go through Bam. It looks like Khalil Ware is going to have some of that offense too, possibly. And then we know what Hawkes does as well too. You have Tyler Hero. So where exactly is Zach LaVine going to get you over the hump? So that would be my question, guys. And so let me know in the comments what you guys think. Out of the three that were suggested by the author, do you think that, hey, he's right on point? These are exactly the reasons why Zach LaVine cannot be traded, which I think he can be traded. Number two, do you believe a lot as to what I'm saying in my final point, that I think a lot of Zach LaVine not being moved comes down to the fit with some of these teams. All right, guys. And so he has a chance to change that narrative by coming back, showing that he can contribute to a team like that. Then I think that that's going to up Zach LaVine's trade value a little bit more. But anyhow, let me know what you guys are thinking in the comments, guys. Once again, even though we have not taken care of business by getting rid of the player that we were supposed to get rid of this offseason, I'm still saying go Bulls, and I will see you guys on the next one. Peace, peace, peace.